You can't save her. Even if you get her out of here, then what? How long before she's torn to pieces by a pack of clickers? That is, if she hasn't been raped and murdered first.
It ain't for you to decide.
It's what she'd want. And you know it.
The Last of Us ending left many people conflicted. Many people did not understand Joel's point of view, felt like he let go of humanity's only chance of survival, and that maybe he should have sacrificed Ellie, or at least let her choose, let her decide. That ambiguous ending left many people conflicted, and I feel like now's the time to revisit that subject, before later on this year The Last of Us 2 will be released. Welcome guys, this is Ola from Stop Me Oh channel, and today we are discussing that. This is an in-depth analysis of Joel and Ellie's relationship and that final choice. Now, let me just start by saying that I cannot actually express how much this game meant to me, and I'm sure it meant just as much to most of you. The Last of Us is a game that changes people, and its story arc is most certainly one of the greatest ones I've ever seen in any games thus far. It was simply a masterpiece, a unique experience, and I feel like, with the second game coming soon, now's the time to discuss the very core of this phenomena. Now, as some people say, The Last of Us did something that previously couldn't be done. It was written in a way that it literally tugged our heartstrings. The characters were real, they were flawed, complex, driven by survival, and able to feel real emotions, like love and hate. And I'm not just talking about Joel and Ellie. I'm also talking about Bill, Tommy, Tess. The game's ending was morally ambiguous and it left us craving for more. Now, I have a very strong opinion about that ending, that final choice. But I feel like in order to get to that, we first need to discuss Joel and Ellie's relationship, their story. I feel like it's crucial to understanding The Last of Us in general. The Last of Us was about it all. About sadness, loss, humanity, fatherhood, family, being a daughter, second chances, surviving, morality, about hope, and eventually, about things we're willing to do in order to save the ones we love. The distance we're willing to travel, both literally and metaphorically. How far we're willing to go. And about a certain line one should never cross, even in the darkest of times.
Even in the darkest of times.
Oops, wrong movie. Let's go back to the very beginning, because this is what defined the narrative. The Last of Us, like many other stories similar to it, started off with loss and despair. It began with a heartbreaking moment that does not leave anyone indifferent. Joel losing his only daughter, Sarah. Sarah's mother was not in the picture anymore, which made their bond stronger and more significant than your usual father and daughter relationship. We met Joel and Sarah the night of the outbreak, moments before it all began. We were able to glance into their life and be part of a very special moment. Sarah giving Joel a birthday present, his watch. Her joking, she bought it with the money she got from selling hardcore drugs. Little did we know that soon the only thing left of Sarah will be that very same watch. Watch she presented him just hours before she died. We learn how that moment changed Joel and predefined him for the years to come.
Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on. No. No. No, no. Please. Please don't. Please.
Now, let's jump ahead to the moment where the actual story begins. A virus outbreak that started the night of Sarah's death takes out more than 60% of the world's population. At the time, Joel is no longer the man we knew from that very first scene. He's a ruthless, soulless smuggler. He's exactly what the post-apocalyptic world expected him to be. Neil Druckmann perfectly described that stat in one of his interviews. We knew we wanted this arc where we started with someone whose life has been horrible for the past 20 years. He's pretty much dead. He's a very different person from the father you saw in the beginning of the story. It seems like at this point all Joel does is trying to survive. There's not a thing in the world he cares about, except for maybe his rather casual girlfriend Tess.
Well, I'm ready now, yeah?
Oh, I can do now.
Beginning of The Last of Us, Joel and Tess got a smuggling job. Not your usual type. They had to smuggle this young, disobedient 14-year-old girl who might just be the very last hope for the mankind. At the time, Joel and Tess were not aware of that. That girl is special. She is immune to the cordyceps virus. She was bitten, yet she did not turn. Ellie. A woman named Marlene, Firefly's member, wants to get Ellie across the country so they can finally work out some type of a vaccine and save the entire human race. To Joe at the time, it's all that it was. A job, a way to get some guns, and Ellie was just that. A thing. Cargo. Something that needed to be passed on. Something that Joe would eventually move on from.
Look, just take her to the North Tunnel and wait for me there.
Jesus Christ.
Just cargo, Joel.
No more talking. I want Joel to watch over her.
Whoa, I don't think that's
Bullshit,
the
I'm not
best
Ellie.
idea.
with him. How do you know them?
I was close with his brother Tommy.
Neither of them were particularly fond of that partnership at first, but it's not exactly a world where you get to negotiate your own terms anymore. It's a post-apocalyptic world, and in order to survive, you need to adjust. As we observe their bond over the course of passing seasons, as we fight to survive, to adjust, as the game continues, we can clearly see worlds Joel built around himself after Sarah's death slowly start to erode. As Neil Druckmann described, at the time Joel had very little humanity left in him. The more time he spent with Ellie though, she would pull that aspect back out of him. First, truly significant moment Joel and Ellie shared together happened while they were waiting for Tess in the safe house. Though it certainly did not seem that special at the time. It's right in that moment Ellie said quite a foreshadowing line.
Your watch is broken.
What she said was never actually about the watch. It was in fact about unresolved feelings Joel still had, walls he built around himself. His grief that never left him, not for a single second. Sarah's death that shut him down for years to come. And how Ellie will be the one to fix that. Before that happened though, they've been through a lot. And at first while playing the game, you don't even feel like it's about that. You fight the infected, clickers, bloaters. You fight the hunters. You meet people both good and bad. You're part of this world now, and while re-entering the game, you start to feel like you're going home. You feel like this is a game about surviving more than anything else. Until a certain moment in the game when you realize you were in fact wrong. The Last of Us is a story about Joel and Ellie. Nothing more, nothing less. Let's get back to the story though. Soon after Ellie joined Joel and Tess, Tess died. She died because she believed Ellie is worth it. She died because she was also bitten while protecting her. And it felt like it could be her last chance of survival. Tess's death made Joel feel like Ellie's the one responsible, which led him to saying these words.
You don't bring up Tess. Ever. Matter of fact, we just keep our histories to ourselves. Secondly, don't tell anybody about your condition. They think you're crazy, they'll try to kill you. And lastly, you do what I say, when I say it. We clear?
Sure.
Repeat it.
What you say goes.
Now this is how he treated her for a very long time. He was cold and distant. He acted as if he doesn't care. Maybe he didn't. He certainly made it look like all that he wants to do is to get rid of her, to never see her again. His aim was to go back to his old self, safe life, comfortable enough for him not to feel anything ever again, which is what he chose after losing Sarah. For a long time Joe and Ellie did not share any deep bonding moments, did not discuss their feelings, nor shared any personal memories with one another. They never discussed Sarah's death, they never discussed Marlene, they never discussed Tess, nor Riley. Riley was not even brought up. And for a long time you felt like maybe that game is in fact about combat, until the moment you realized, in between these moments, A strong bond has formed, and it happened in silence. A bond that doesn't require any words. A bond that speaks through their actions. Even though neither of them were particularly eager to discuss it, they did start to care for one another. In that moment, the most human relationship that ever existed in any games was born. Despite of what Joe said, Ellie lost people too. We learned about her relationship with Riley, which to her at the time felt confusing. She lost her mother, she lost Tess. She was about to lose Marlene. While playing the game, we only knew Joel's point of view, his history and experience. But thanks to the Left Behind DLC, we were actually able to get to know Ellie just a little bit more. We found out that she also went through so much. Found out she lost someone very special to her, a girl, Riley. She died soon after their very first kiss. And let's not forget that Ellie at the time is just 14 years old. Even though she grew up in the military zone, even though she's tough and smart and able to survive just as well as Joe is, she's still just a kid that needed someone to look after her. She cared about Joe, she was willing to go far distances for him. She never had any real parents except for maybe Marlene, who was taking care of her after her mother's death. Ellie knew that she found something that was previously missing from her life, someone who actually cared for her, someone who would never abandon her, in her opinion. Ellie saw something in Joel, something that others did not. And after she found out that Joel lost Sarah, she understood perfectly well why he kept her at distance for such a long time. It wasn't because he did not care, it was because he cared too much and knew he's putting himself at risk while smuggling her. And I do not mean an actual risk, I mean the fear of losing someone he cares about, yet again. Ellie was not afraid to confront him about that.
I'm not her, you know.
What?
Maria told me about Sarah.
Ellie?
And
You are treading on some mighty thin ice here.
I'm sorry about your daughter, Joel, but I have lost people too.
You have no idea what loss is.
Everyone I have cared for has either died or left me. Everyone fucking except for you. So don't tell me that I would be safer with someone else, because the truth is I would just be more scared.
You're right. You're not my daughter. And I sure as hell ain't your dad.
This right there. This is the moment when you realize there's never been a greater relationship in any games that ever existed. And that oblivion will hit you hard. This scene was actually shot a couple of times until they decided it's perfect. Ellie, running away after finding out Joe still wants to leave her, hand her off. After all they've been through, feeling betrayed, feeling like the only person that was constantly there for her still doesn't want to let her in. Joe cared. He cared deeply and it scared him. He realized that once he lets someone in again, he will be exposed. There will be a risk of feeling like he felt after losing Sarah, and that maybe this time around he won't be able to survive it, to survive the potential loss of another child. He felt like the only way he can protect himself is to shoot Ellie down, close the doors that's already been opened, separate himself. In that very moment, they both actually acknowledged that this is in fact a father and daughter relationship. And it was the fear of losing Ellie that led Joe to believe the best thing he can do is to actually leave her behind. Just moments after that scene, we saw what was probably the breaking point in their story. Silent, painful journey, leading up to their final goodbye. Tommy beside them, ready to take over the guardianship. These are the very moments that shaped Joe's decision. He let Ellie in. It's too late to pretend nothing's going on. It's too late to give her up, because at this point, he's already exposed to the pain of separation. Joe knew Ellie is his daughter, and he's the one responsible for her. He was not willing to let that go, to say another goodbye.
There's a place for you here, you know?
You good?
I'm good.
Adios, little brother.
They were good, but things were about to get complicated yet again. Soon winter came. which led to another heartbreaking event. This time around, it was Ellie who had to take care of deeply wounded Joel, and by doing so, she has proven just how much she's willing to do for him. She almost ended up dead.
Fucking touch me!
It's okay. It's me. It's me. It's me. Look. It's me.
He tried to...
Oh, baby girl. It's okay. It's okay.
No.
It's okay. Don't do this to me, baby. Don't do this to me, baby. Come on.
He called her baby girl, just like he used to call his daughter, Sarah. These final moments of the game made us realize that we've actually come a full circle. We reached the medical facility, find the Fireflies. We found out what they were actually willing to do. Killing Ellie, in order to study her brain and possibly develop a vaccine. Joe did not think twice. Would you? He already lost one daughter, and he was not about to lose another one. It wasn't a matter of saving Ellie, it was also the only way to redeem his actions, which, as he believed, led to Sarah's death. He saved Ellie. By doing so, he let go of humanity's only possible shot at survival. Was it humanity's only shot at survival though? Was it really? Or perhaps humanity's only shot at survival would be not letting one person die in order to possibly, and I mean possibly, save many. So many people while discussing this subject missed the point. Judge Joel. Assume what he did was selfish, egoistic, throw the absolutes around. Yes, Joel did it for his own reasons. He did it to save Ellie, he did it to save himself. But if you think about it, there's so much more humanity in saving a person that we love rather than in willingly killing one. Even if we think it's for a good reason. What The Last of Us presented by the end of its story is merely a new dilemma. Should we sacrifice one person in order to potentially save many people? This problem both does and doesn't apply here. We don't know if the Fireflies would find a cure. We don't know if they would develop a vaccine, that's not guaranteed. What we do know though, is that an innocent person would die in order for us to find out. Is this what it means to be a human? During difficult times, war times, people lose themselves. The Last of Us showed it better than any other game. It's survival that matters. You will kill others in order to get their food, get their guns. Increase your chances of survival. You don't know what you're capable of until you're put in that position. You might think you're a moral person. You might think you wouldn't kill another human being until you do. Now, we know that Joel killed people. Even Ellie did. But they never did it lightly. Usually they did it in order to defend themselves. If that doesn't justify death, if only a little bit, then I don't know what does. Now, Fireflies were willing to kill Ellie in order to save humanity, which sounds like a noble cause. But isn't killing one innocent person the very last proof that humanity is in fact lost? It's hard to discuss that without mentioning the trolley problem. Probably most literate example of sacrifice one to save many dilemma. You see a runaway trolley, moving toward 5 tied up people lying on the tracks. You are standing next to a lever that controls a switch. If you pull the lever, the trolley will be redirected onto a side track, and the 5 people on the main track will be saved. However, there is a single person lying on the side track. You have 2 options. Do nothing and allow the trolley to kill the 5 people on the main track, or pull the lever, diverting the trolley onto the side track where it will kill 1 person. Now, that's the core of The Last of Us' final decision. Either you let go, let humanity be, knowing it's possibly doomed, except you're not actually the one that caused the outbreak, or you willingly kill 1 person, except it's your decision, your violence that leads to someone else's demise. Now up to this point, I can still see many people saying, yes, I am willing to sacrifice 1 person in order to save many people. The needs of many outweigh the needs of few, right? But let me rephrase my question. If you're a doctor and you can save 5 people with organ failures by killing one person and harvesting their perfectly healthy organs, are you willing to do that? Not so sure anymore? In order to solve a moral dilemma like that one needs to apply a filter. That filter is in fact your own feelings, your own emotional attachment. There is a difference between letting something happen and causing it yourself. There's a difference between saving someone you love or saving countless but anonymous people. This is where utilitarianism philosophy proves itself useful, because even though it does value utility as the ultimate goal, it is also not afraid to count morality into our actions. Utilitarianism doesn't require narrow-minded calculation of utility within the confines of every situation and circumstance. What it tells us instead is to keep our eye on the big picture, that what really matters is feelings. What tends to make them better globally is good, what makes them worse is bad. Utilitarianism supplies a filter for evaluating moral dilemmas like that one. Utilitarianism tells us that while taking utility into consideration, we still need to remain moral. In other words, if X is willing to sacrifice himself for what he thinks is the greater good, that's fine. But if X is willing to sacrifice Y for what X thinks is the greater good, that's not fine at all. Also, personally, I always figured that life is not something that can be measured in quantities. Life is not measurable. You cannot actually decide who gets to live or who gets to die. You can only accept someone else's wish in that matter, or you can accept their fate. Now, here's where it gets tricky for Joel. As Marlene pointed out, Ellie most probably would sacrifice herself. She would want to at least try and save people. Ironically, it only makes her much more special and worth saving. And Joel knew that perfectly well.
It ain't for you to decide.
It's what she'd want. And you know it.
Now, this is where we get to that final, ambiguous ending. Ellie asking Joel about the truth, and him lying to her. Did she know that he lied? Was she aware that he let go of humanity's only possible shot at survival by saving her? I think she did. I think she knew he lied, but she still wanted to believe him in order to be able to move on. It's a cognitive dissonance, a situation involving conflicting attitudes, beliefs, or even behaviors. Ellie was left with a feeling of mental discomfort that led to an alteration in her beliefs. In other words, she needed to hear Joel say, "I swear." She needed to hear these words in order to move on.
No matter what, you keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you've said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.
Now again, let's not forget she's 14 years old. Her decision process is not fully developed yet. There's a reason why people of age are not allowed to make their own serious decisions. Because they might just make the wrong one, make the wrong choice. Except we know Ellie is special. She's mature and capable of handling herself just as well as Joel is. The question is, do we allow her to make that decision? Do we allow her to sacrifice herself, knowing that she probably would? I'm sure you have your own answer to that. But being Ellie's, it's safe to say so, father, it was our role to protect her from her own decision. It's also not our place to decide who gets to live or who gets to die. And by sacrificing Ellie, we'd be doing just that. Now, as a player, we were never given a chance to make that decision. A game decided for us. Joel saved Ellie, and we could either agree with that or not. But it's also what made that game a masterpiece. It's not a clean ending. It's not your black and white, easy, dramatic outcome that's often made that way for the sole purpose of shocking the player. Life moves on. Both Joel and Ellie get to live. And they both have to live knowing they left something behind. Not just people that they lost, not only their grief and their pain, but also humanity's possible chance of survival. They did receive something in return though, and I'm fairly certain after watching that video you know what. What does The Last of Us even mean? Does it mean the last of us, those who survived? Does it mean the last of our old selves, our past? I think yes, but it also means the last of humanity. That last final choice that allows us to prove that we are in fact still humans. We hurt, we sometimes make the wrong choices, but we also get second chances. And sometimes we do something simply because of love. Thank you for watching.
Turns out there's a whole lot more like you, Ellie. People that are immune. There's dozens, actually. Ain't done 'em a damn bit of good, neither. They've stopped looking for a cure. I'm taking us home. I'm sorry.